You keep anonymous for so many years. Is it difficult to maintain it? And, this 21st century, the century of, social media, publicity.
No, because I've set limits on the amount of time that I'll do it. Sometimes I do it more often than others, but Darth has the following that he has. It becomes kind of partly I feel a responsibility because it's such a serious situation, but also partly I won't lie that it feels good to have a platform where you have quite an audience, so you don't feel so completely. I don't know what's the right word. It's not like you're just this one voice among millions. You've actually got a platform, so you can have the satisfaction of having your opinion matter more than it would if you only had 50 followers. But I do try to keep it in perspective.
And influence, just say.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I'll let you say that. I think it's also because it's grown organically. So obviously, the first 6 months of the war, the following really shot up. I guess it would be nice not to have to do it. That's what you're saying. It would be nice not to feel you have to do it. It would be nice not to be in this situation. But how do I manage it? I don't know. A lot of the I suppose the other thing is I'm quite lucky in that it doesn't take me a lot of effort to mock them because a lot of their talking points are not sophisticated. There's nothing particularly complex about what they're trying to do. You can understand the Kremlin rather well by listening to what they tell you, and also if you're willing to spend some time reading books or listening to lectures about people who do know what they're talking about. And once you have a certain amount of knowledge of what the Kremlin's policies are and how they work, then a lot of the time the tweets just write themselves.
So you don't pressure that you have such a big audience that you have to post. Also, I wanted to ask you, because we all humans, and our personal mood sometimes it's not so shiny and bright. Does your personal mood influence on Darth posting? Do you feel like pressure that you have to post?
I don't feel pressure to do it, but I guess on occasion it probably has come through because several years ago, somebody said, something along the lines of "Don't tweet as yourself, tweet as Darth," because they could tell I was frustrated about something. So, but I can't count how many tens of thousands of tweets Darth has made. So, if that's only happened once or twice, I must be doing it okay. I don't feel a pressure to do it. In the early days, I kind of wondered about that a little bit, but then I think the first time I ever kind of felt that was when Nemtsov was murdered. And I was kind of thinking, I haven't made a decent tweet in ages, and I haven't said anything original or whatever in a few days. And then he goes and shoots himself in the back 4 times right outside the Kremlin, just as all the security cameras were conveniently turned off. So the lesson for me on that, aside from the personal tragedy of a father and a husband being murdered, was the fact that you don't need to worry about content for the Kremlin. They will eventually. If you just got to wait, they'll do something completely stupid or horrifying or atrocious, appalling, criminal, or just funny. You just got to wait. They'll do it. I was during the Sochi Olympics. I was kind of wondering about it. There were people that were having a lot of fun at their expense, and then some deputy minister of sport was saying that we happen to know that the Americans have been deliberately vandalizing their rooms, and that there's been nothing wrong with them, and they've been deliberately breaking the equipment because we have cameras in the showers. And he said this on TV, and all these journalists kind of looked at each other, and then sort of thinking, did you get the same translation as I got? Because they've got the real-time translation going on in their ears. And suddenly his handler just jumped in and just said, "That's it, press conference over." He didn't mean that at all. No, we don't have cameras in the showers. Because, I don't know if you remember, but the doors were made of cardboard, or, a lot of the time the plumbing wasn't working because it had all been thrown together on the cheap after the budget was stolen. And this character had come out and said something like that. So you start to think, eventually you don't need to look for it. They'll they'll say something stupid, and it'll just write itself from there.
Have you ever received death threats?
Yeah, a couple of times.
Do you think they seems to be real to you, or it's just some moron sitting in the basement and writing?
It's most likely a moron sitting in a basement. Yeah, I mean, I take precautions, and when it happens, you kind of have to trust the procedures that I have in place are going to work. I wouldn't necessarily compare my social experience to yours, though. My social media experience. Any woman on social media is going to have 10 times worse experience than anything that me anonymously satirizing the Kremlin will experience. Because I've never experienced everyday sexism or violent threats of sexual violence or anything like that, which I'm sure you have. So I wouldn't compare my experience too much. It does happen. I don't like it. You just block them and move on.
It is a huge topic. It is a big issue. It is, even if to take it on the different scale, I mean, many people do need psychological support even. So yeah, it is another topic that we definitely should discuss later. But let's move to a very interesting question. Transitioning from your tweets to a book is a significant shift, and I'm very well prepared, sir, and I have this book here. So, what inspired you to write this amazing How to Tanky book? From little tweets, which requires like few words, to a book. How was this experience? And it's really like exploring parody in longer format. And by the way, I have Get Out of the Gulag card. So guys, don't be jealous. Just if you haven't already, you have to get this book. I will leave all links that you need under this video. Who inspired you? How did you manage to do it?
Well, thank you very much for that. So, in addition to not getting any perfume, you can not get any tea either. Yeah, I wrote it. When did it publish? A year ago, so the war had been going for a while. I've always had this thing that there's a certain type of person who likes Russia very much. They tend to be very passionate about Russia and the culture and the language and the history and everything. But they think that they can individually change people's minds about Putin and the system that man's created. And they will engage with trolls on a one-to-one level and have long threads with them, and it's a complete waste of time. And I started noticing, having done this for long enough, that they only have a certain number of talking points, and it's kind of like one of these old children's toys with the cable in the chest that you pull out, and it would just start repeating certain phrases. And it's like that with trolls. It's like, the first thing they'll say is, "Well, what about Iraq?" Okay, so the United States invaded Iraq, which was bad, which means that Russia didn't invade whichever country you happen to be talking about at the time. So I originally wrote a thread about it. I think probably in the early stages of the war, the first point, which basically formed the chapter structure of the books. The first one is that Russia is the victim. Russia is only defending itself. And then, what about Iraq? And so on and so on and so on and so on. And one of the earliest subtweets was by a very well-respected Russia watcher with a very accurate track record of predictions, much to the irritation of some of his colleagues. I use the word colleagues loosely. And he said, "That's it, I can quit now. I don't need to do this anymore because this explains everything." So, and then a couple of people had sort of said, this should be a book. So I started thinking about it, and then I thought, okay, let's give it a go. So I took the threads, and then I basically just wrote a sort of a page of A4 on each particular point in there, and started linking it together and then structuring it up a little bit so there was a kind of a flow to it. Then somebody agreed to edit it for me, and that was how the book came to be. I should probably. There's sort of two things have come out about it. Is that one, not as many people as I thought know what the word tanky actually is and what it means, and where it comes from. So I probably need to try and think of another title. And we're not far off of 2 years into this great raging atrocity, so there's probably an update that's required, because one of the things I've really noticed that's become a major talking point amongst trolls and pro-Russia people is that Ukraine doesn't have any agency, which is sort of hinted at in the book, because Ukraine's a buffer state. You've got to remember Ukraine exists to be between countries that matter and Russia. So it doesn't have any agency of its own, because this rather comical idea that if the West stopped giving Ukrainians arms to fight the war, then the war would end and you and Russia could just go away and sing songs and paint pictures of cows and carry on growing flowers together or something. And it's just that if the Ukrainians could only just wake up and realize that they don't actually want to fight this war. That's something I've really noticed that isn't in the book, that's happened over the last sort of year or so, as the Russians try to push this idea that the Anglo-Saxons, those devious Anglo-Saxons again, somehow scuppered any chance of a peace deal by somehow staging the Butcher massacre in an area that the Russian military controlled under their noses in a completely massive, complicated operation that Russian intelligence was too stupid to catch. I'm tired of watching people make the same mistakes fighting with these people. You can't argue with them on the basis of facts, because they don't accept the existence of facts. Facts are the work of the imperialists. Logic is the tool of the imperialists. And that's a throwaway remark that logic is an imperialist concept. But I have many times seen communists, Marxists, Trotskyites, whatever, saying whataboutism is a legitimate tactic to highlight the crimes of imperialism. No, whataboutism is a straight-out logical fallacy. So logic is therefore the tool of the imperialist. So it was just my attempt at explaining to people, this is how you deal with them. You're going to tie yourself up in knots and completely ruin your social media experience if you try to argue with these people as if their positions had any merit, which they don't. So the best thing you can do is try to understand it, and I tried to write the book through the lens of the tanky himself is a kind of hybrid character of a international relations professor from the West who's very sympathetic to the Russians. You can name one or two of them. A professor of academics from an unrelated field who has very pro-Russian views, and then somebody who's from your kind of local Marxist-Leninist collective who's got nothing else to do with their life but protest against NATO and the European Union and shadowy banks. So that the person writing the book is a kind of amalgamation of these characters, and that person writes what they genuinely believe. These are the things that they believe, which is that Russia has never invaded anybody in its entire history. Russia became the world's largest country entirely through peaceful means. The only time that Russia is always attacked by its neighbors, just as their own army is massed in attack formation accidentally on their border and is able to respond immediately, or is requested by the concerned local citizens to help them. All of these kind of things that have been going on since the 1920s. So it's sort of misworded Kremlinese that reveals a hidden truth. So that's how it came together.
Absolutely amazing how you managed to put everything in this not big but very, very informative book. My favorite is of course the chapter about threatening to defend yourself. Oh my god, if you look at the history, it's just Russia does it to everyone. Russia is being threatened by everyone, and if to look at the history, I think most of their invasions started from
Yeah.
from we came to save. Either it was like indigenous people back in the beginning of 20th centuries, whether it was like Chechens, Georgians, I mean Ukraine, where eastern part of Ukraine, where why to go very far? So yeah, it is very precise.
Threatening to defend yourself came from around April 2021, the first time the Russians massed their army on Ukraine's borders and then sent them home. I think it was possibly the German foreign minister at the time, I reserve the right to be wrong, but said it's something along the lines of it's fantastic that everybody's agreed to de-escalate the situation. Everybody's agreed to de-escalate the situation? The Russians have stopped threatening to invade and the Ukrainians have stopped threatening to defend themselves, yes. So the Ukrainians have helped de-escalate the situation in that way, yes. That's absolutely fantastic. So yeah, that's where that chapter came from. This ridiculous suggestion that there's an equivalence between a country defending itself versus a country threatening to attack it.
It's been almost an hour and I appreciate your time so much. And actually, I don't want to run out of battery because I have few very important questions and
Okay.
I need to go take my charger. But before that, let's talk about relations. You wrote once, as it's International Women's Day, you said, ladies, don't reject me, won't be sent to the gulag. What does Darth actually thinks about women in general?
Darth, what does he think about women? No, he's basically terrified of them, I think. Well, I don't know. He doesn't talk to women in the same way that mere mortals have to talk to women, because he's completely transcended the concept of money and power. That if he wants a lady, I assume he just snaps his finger and one is provided for him. So they're very keen on the cultural wars aspect of it, because they haven't actually got any particular policies that would benefit people. There's a reason Russia's population is declining and that their quality of life is declining and their economy is declining and all this kind of stuff. So they have to manufacture these culture wars about how it's got nothing to do with the fact that their politicians are robbing them blind and massive corruption in the country. It's because feminists want the vote or the right to not turn live babies into dead soldiers. So yeah, I don't know if that's an actual answer. What does Darth think of women? He just views them as transactional objects.
So you wouldn't invite me for a date?
Well, you're considerably taller than Darth, so I'm not sure if that would be good for Darth or bad for Darth.
Which advice would Darth give to men if they actually want to get attention, from beautiful women?
Well,
to get
the next book that Darth is writing will has a chapter on that. So obviously, as a master strategist, you don't once you've achieved master strategy, you don't actually have to try to get the attention of women. They try to get the attention of you because they will recognize you as the alpha male. So that's kind of an answer to that. So it's not the right question.
Where do you see actually the Darth Putin character going in the future? And do you have some plans maybe that you want to share with us? How you're gonna, or your plans to expand it in some new directions? Because I'm your fan as well, including myself, and many other people are waiting for some new formats, for Darth's presence.
There are plans in the works to have a more regular podcast series, where I haven't asked anybody yet, but we might try and get some interesting guests on board and then have Darth at the end of the table listening to the interview and occasionally throwing in comments as he would see them. Mainly, I think, partly, how do you put it correctly? It's just this way of doing counter propaganda, if that's the right word. How do you smack trolls? So there's a big market for it. A lot of the time, people ask Darth, why do you give these people the oxygen that they want? So, well, okay, yeah, that's a fair point. There's a lot of trolls have a kind of what I believe could only be a kink for sexual humiliation, because they seem to enjoy thousands of people telling them why they are complete morons. So, yes, okay, you're giving them the oxygen that they require, but it's also a lesson for people to say this is how you smack a troll on this particular subject, which is that, Ukraine is prolonging the war by defending itself or something stupid like that. Or, obviously there was a bio-lab underneath that children's hospital or something like that. What I've been thinking about is that having some kind of forum where the like-minded could gather together and maybe put questions to the president, and then also hear the particular. Let's think. The next couple of days, it's the anniversary of one of the Soviet Nazi treaties. I think it's the Nazi German Soviet commercial agreement, which had a secret clause. So the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact isn't the only treaty that was signed that had a secret clause, and this particular treaty basically helped fund the Nazi war machine with raw materials. So there's that, and then there's other anniversaries that are coming up, or other particular events that are likely to get the Kremlin talking that particular week, and what might we consider as ways of smacking trolls about that, plus the opportunity to maybe delve deeper into some of the topics that you mentioned about what it's like being a woman online surrounded by Putin's trolls.
Wonderful. So many new things are coming. I'm just pretending that I don't know about them and I'm not excited, but I am, and as well as um, our followers that have been waiting for something new from you. So it's really cool to hear. And if you met a real Vladimir Putin, what would you ask him? Have you ever thought about that?
I don't know, what drugs do you take? I flush things with more value than he does, than he has to me. I don't know. We're talking about somebody who, he would deny that it snows in Russia if he felt that he had to. I always remember that neither of them come out of it with any credit, but it was when Merkel said after the Euromaidan, and she obediently, dutifully trooped off to Russia to meet with him and have an audience and talk to him and hear his particular side of things. And he'd given her the uncensored view of what the Kremlin honestly thought was happening in Kyiv in those days. And she came out and said that he's no longer in touch with reality. And I'm thinking, he's no longer in touch with reality? Sorry, wake up and smell the coffee, Angela. This is what he's been believing for a very long time. You've just chosen not to listen. So, what kind of question are you going to ask a person like that? Why would you ask him anything? Because the answer is just, if he told me it was raining outside, I'd look out the window first before I believed him. There's no point asking someone a question like that, because the answer is just going to be whatever he feels that he needs to believe at that particular time, that doesn't rip his mental comfort blanket off and expose him to reality. So I don't think I'd ask him anything. I might ask him if he's got a decent lawyer, because if I see him, he's likely to be on his way to The Hague, and I hope his lawyer's even dumber than Medvedev is.
Yeah. Well, then let's make a bet. In the end of our interview, let's make a bet. Who will get the right answer or closer to the right answer? Then we will make a post, and our followers will decide the one who would win and the one who would lose do what. So Putin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov, I think few months ago said that Putin will win presidential elections.
What an amazing prediction that was, yeah.
Wait. He said with a result about 90%. So let's make a prediction. Obviously, we will not make a bet on whether he wins or not, but we will make a bet. So Peskov said it will be more than 90%. What do you think? Which percentage Putin will win elections?
It'll have to be. I think they've got three categories. They want 70% turnout, 70% result voting for him, and no other candidates under 70. So there's those three things they want. I don't remember who said that, but that's pretty accurate. So it's definitely, it's going to be north of 70 because the father of the nation doesn't stoop to the muddiness of the pettiness of a runoff, with a mere hopeful. So it's going to be north of 70, and I don't know. You want to say north of 90, and I'll say between 80 and 90, and you'll say north of 90. Is that what you're getting at?
No, I was actually thinking about 78. I don't know why this number, but I was thinking about 78. Of course, I'm not that optimistic as Peskov probably that he's actually saying about 90%. Of course, he said after that, it wasn't exactly that what the journalist put onto the paper. He said he meant that it's 90% of the population support that Putin is getting, but the frauded sleep, so we all know what he actually meant. So Pisco said 90, Darth is saying 70, I'm saying 78.
I would say north of 75, but you must never allow an election without first deciding the result. So it's essentially it's entirely possible that was a very deliberate accident where he was signaling to people that this is the requirement that we expect of the regions. So I imagine that's how it'll be interpreted by some poor bureaucrat somewhere. We'll be told if I don't get 90%, I'm going to be for the fifth floor window.
I'm so happy that you found the time to speak to us, and we all need to remember, guys, that as Darth Putin once said, that Russia has cut defense spending, but attack spending remains unchanged. So thank you so much for watching us. Thank you so much for supporting Ukraine. Follow Darth on Twitter, follow my Twitter as well, and I'm leaving all necessary links under this video. See you next time, and Darth, thank you so much for staying with us, for talking to us, and you remain a master strategist.
Yeah. Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. I was about to say you should always remain a master strategist. And don't believe anything till the Kremlin denies it.
Absolutely.